Good morning, everybody, on this New Year's Eve of 2020, bro. We are less than 24 hours away of putting away this dreadful, dreadful, dreadful year forever and starting anew. And speaking of starting anew, I told you guys we were always going to add to the brand. And I told you the biggest issue in adding with the brand is finding the right people, because the brand is all about commitment. The brand is all about the subscribers and the brand base. And I want to make sure that when we commit to new shows, they are going to be there and they are going to be delivered. And that's why this man is sitting here next to me, John Pozarowski, John Poz of Two Man Power Trip. I have known John. John and I have done many shows together, but more importantly, I have sat back and I have watched John build a nice little brand. And John has done it the old-fashioned way. John has done it the Vince Russo way. John bust his ass. Would you agree with that, Mr. John?
Yes, for sure. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for saying it, though. Appreciate
that. That is the truth. And like I say, I mean, John's not a stranger to me. Me and John have done work together. I know John's work, and I had the idea a couple of months ago was I would love to somehow, some way bring John and the Two Man Power Trip under the umbrella of Russo's brand, because John had some really, really good shows. And John, with the brand, we have a lot of really serious wrestling fans. We got the fans that, bro, we see what we see on TV. But, John, let's face it, a lot of us these days aren't really a big fan of what we see on TV. But what we like is really the meat on the bone, that I call it. What the wrestling business as a business, the people involved, the history. And you do 4 shows with, man, guys that can give you great hit. And bro, listen, maybe if we had 10 guys that can give us great history of this business, 3 of these guys I think would be in the top 10. But before we get to those shows, John, introduce yourself officially to the audience. Tell them a little bit about yourself, because even yesterday, bro, I learned something about you. Now you had this illustrious wrestling career in the ring. I knew nothing about till yesterday. So, John, tell everybody about you and about Two Man Power Trip and how this started.
Well, I'm just a lifelong wrestling fan since probably about 1985 or so. My dad used to be a big fan. I kind of got me into it, but really my cousins, who were just huge Hulk Hogan fans, they got me into it. And when I moved, it was about 1985, 86, I moved to this new town, and my buddy across the street was obsessed with wrestling. His cousins were obsessed with wrestling, and it was all kind of central on Hogan. Like, everyone thought he was the guy. He was the man. As soon as I saw the guy, I fell in love with him. I'm like, my God, like, this guy is my hero. I love Hogan. So really it's kind of, I guess you could say, his fault of why I love wrestling so much. But it definitely started with the Hulkster back in the mid 80s. Just absolutely fell in love with it. And then slowly but surely started doing conventions just as a fan, going to shows, went to a million wrestling shows, would go to MSG, would go to the Meadowlands, would just go anywhere I could, Philly, anywhere I could, to go see wrestling. And me and my buddies were all obsessed with it. We'd pretend we're this guy, like, oh, if you're Hall, I'm Nash. If you're Hogan, I'm Savage. Like, you just pretend, you just kind of really get involved and become the guy, like, oh, I'm going to be the Warrior. And you act it out and you pretend you're the Warrior. And this is even in high school, we would do this stuff. People thought we were crazy, but, we were obsessed with wrestling. We just absolutely loved it. And then slowly but surely, met PJ, just incredible, probably I'd say early 2000s. He lived in the town next to me. I had no idea. And we just became buddies. And then he's like, you know what? why don't you come to a bunch of shows with me? So he started taking me to some shows, kind of took me under his wing a little bit as far as doing minor conventions and doing some stuff with him, doing a little bit of training, not much, a lot more like psychology and stuff. Like his mind for the business is crazy. So, he'd get me into watching some stuff that I was like shocked. And then, he'd be like, oh, my buddy, Sean Waltman. I'm like, well, I'm familiar with him. Yes. He's like, he loves Japanese. And then, you start watching that stuff and you get into the tape trading and you get online as the internet grew. I became obsessed with the Japanese guys even more so. And then Ring of Honor got popular, became really, involved with Ring of Honor and just loved them and just slowly kind of, really got into wrestling more and more and more. And then we ran our own conventions. And then basically in 2015, we started the 2-man power trip, almost because we didn't like a lot of the other podcasts out there that were just guys that didn't really know wrestling. We were lifelong wrestling fans. We knew all this stuff about wrestling. I got a bunch of guys that were kind of just talking stuff about wrestling that didn't really make sense or didn't jive with us. So I said, why don't we just interview wrestlers? Like that'll be the only thing that we do is just interview wrestlers, past, present, future, legends, Hall of Famers. And then it grew. So 2015 got recognized somehow by Rolling Stone as one of the top podcasts. And it just kind of kept rolling from there. We got on Dusty Rhodes.
I didn't even know that, John.
Oh, yeah.
That's incredible. I had no idea. Congratulations about that. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Dusty on?
Yeah, so as soon as we got Dusty, it was actually through Joe Malenko, who was like, "Hey," and he's like, because as we're starting to get bigger and grow, it's like, "All right, we got to go for like some bigger names and really kind of go in." And he's like, so I interviewed Joe Malenko and they were promoting something. He's like, how about Dusty? And I was like, like being like a huge mark. I'm like, oh, Dusty Rhodes, are you kidding? But on the phone, I'm like, oh yeah, the Dusty Rhodes. Yeah, that sounds great. But as soon as you hang up, like, yes, Dusty, you're crazy about it. So I was like, holy crap, Dusty Rhodes. So Dusty would text me and stuff. I'm like, hey, Johnny, and really nice, really cool. Call me and just like, hey, what do you want? What are we talking about here? I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about Florida and blah, blah, blah. So that kind of set the wheels in motion. And then Kevin Dunn got a hold of me. He wanted that interview because Dusty had just passed. And then Jerry McDivitt we had on the show, which was like just kind of blew up huge. And I know it kind of just snowballed from there and just kept getting bigger and bigger. And not that we're huge or any sort of thing, but we just love the business, especially me. I just love the business so much. I wanted to kind of do more and more and more. And I don't know, it's one of those things where I just wanted to do a show here, wanted to do a show here. And I was like, man, it'd be awesome if I could get that contact with Kevin Sullivan or Dutch or Tom Pritchard. And it just kind of, or Shane Douglas, obviously, but it just kind of grew from there.
John, you hit it, man. You hit upon a lot of things that you and I really have in common. First of all, bro, I've said this many times, and I have no problem admitting to this. And this was probably a little before your time, but I think, bro, if I look at as a wrestling fan when I was younger, when was the time I went over the top? And I got to say, bro, one time I did go over the top. I was a huge fan of the big cat Ernie Ladd. And I got to meet Ernie Ladd, and it was such a freaking honor. But me and my friend, Richie Misback, in about 7th, 8th grade, bro, this is when between periods, the halls would be loaded with people. Okay. Bro, me and my friend Richie would literally put a penny on our thumbnail right there and then tape our thumb with white tape like Ernie Ladd. And in the crowded hallways while everybody was going to the next class, we would literally give people the thumb. So I understand I did that, bro. I have no problem saying that. Also, let's talk about this, bro. You talk about a very interesting time of Hulkamania. John, I tell people this all the time. They say to me, I get the old, oh, Vince, always taking credit for the attitude. But I get that bullshit all the time. And I've said a million times, John, to me as a fan and a professional, bro, I believe the greatest period in wrestling were those early WrestleMania years.
Yes.
When WrestleMania 1 to 3, bro, if you ask me, that blew the Attitude Era away. And that's the era I really go to when when I'm looking at all these years I spent wrestling. WrestleMania 1 to 3, man, you might even be able to stretch that out to 5 because I went to 4 and 5 at Trump Tower.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, bro, I believe that was the greatest era of wrestling. What about you now, bro? You were more of a you were ECW fan. So maybe when you look at like Attitude Era, you you think about ECW in that time and the Monday Night Wars and all that. But even with me looking at all that, I'll still say WrestleMania 1 to 3. What about you?
See, I'm more of a WCW guy than anything. So the NWO to me was
Yeah.
awesome, and of course, all predicated on the fact that it was Hogan and him turning heel. Obviously, Hall and Nash are awesome, but to me, that was like the shocker. Like, holy crap! So then I became, I kind of always liked the heels a little bit, but then I was just obsessed. But I will agree. I'll agree with you. I actually think my favorite time is basically in like if you think about it, I'd say WrestleMania 3, 4, 5, 6 is like for me, and you could maybe stretch it to 7, but that's the time because Hogan versus Savage is well, first of all, Hogan Andre, that's the big feud, and then Hogan Savage to me, even when they were teaming, had that dissension, and then they broke it up. To me, that's the greatest feud ever. It's like holy crap, because there's
Yeah.
some realness there, and you sense even as a kid, you're like, there's something going on here with these guys.
John, I have
Yeah.
to tell you, and this was the only time I experienced this in wrestling, including the Attitude Era. John, I was in the Garden the first time Savage wrestled Hogan. Very first time. Bro, the rafters were shaking. In Madison Square Garden. That's the only time I ever went to a wrestling event where that happened. And yeah, bro, back then it was everything was right. Everything was going right. Now, John, I'm concerned a little bit now. Now I gotta ask you this question because I might want to rethink this. You talk about Japanese tape trading.
Yes.
Mike Johnson has said that he was part of this underground tape trading ring in Philly where they used to go to like these underground bunkers and they used to have code names and, the slot would open in the door and you'd have to give the code name and then they would exchange the tape through the crack in the door. This isn't what you were involved in, was it?
No. He's a little bit older than me, so maybe that has something to do with it, but he's not that much older. He's just a little bit older, but no, never. When he said that, that's just so funny to me because I was like, never experienced that. I just would get it from like this guy, George Mayfield, who was a huge guy who used to get all the tapes, older guy, but he was like the convention king back in the day. Like you get tapes from him or something like that. And I was like, what the hell's Mike Johnson doing? Like, where is he going? Sounds like he's going like a Philly porn shop.
Yeah, like exactly. When he was telling that story, I'm like, bro, what are they doing? Cockfighting down there?
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't do that. You didn't go to that.
He was with little Jerry Seinfeld doing the cockfight.
Little Jerry Seinfeld, yes. All right, now, John, I got to tell you, man, we got 4 shows here. And I have had the honor and pleasure of working with all 4 of these individuals. And listen, man, I've even had ups and downs with a couple of these individuals, but that doesn't matter, bro. You're gonna have up and downs of people you work with. We've long talked after I was active in the business. Everything's cool. But man, we've got some really knowledgeable people here. So, John, I want you to tell us a little bit about these shows, what we can expect from these shows. And then I will tell everybody listening who's a member of the brand, I will tell you where these shows are going to fall. Some shows are going to fall on Realm. Some shows are going to fall on Patreon. I will lay that all out for you. But John, first give us this lineup.
So Dr. Tom Pritchard, taking you to school, he's just like a wealth of knowledge. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but he trained The Rock, he trained Kurt Angle, he trained Vince McMahon to wrestle, trained Shane McMahon to wrestle, the Bella Twins, Bray Wyatt, Dolph Ziggler. I mean, the list goes on and on of all the guys he trained. So, and he still has a school now called the JPWA with Glenn Jacobs.
Also too, John, prior to that, I want everybody to know, prior to that, Tom worked for the WWE as a performer when I was there, the Heavenly Bodies. And also, Tom is the brother of Bruce Pritchard, so you guys know. So, I worked with both Tom and Bruce at the same time at the WWF. So, this was a very, very successful wrestler in the business. And then he went on to become one of the great trainers. I mean, I got to tell you, man, I don't want to diss anybody, but I put like Tom up there with Al Snow, Bubba and Devon, have their wrestling school. Man, this is one of the top schools in the country from a guy that has learned from the best. But go ahead, John, continue.
Yeah, not even to mention, we go through his wrestling career too, which I love doing because I'm an old school fan. So I just kind of love going through the territories. And he's got a wealth of knowledge. You give him a name, and he gives you a great story about whoever you may not even heard of. Like I'll say Jerry the King Lawler, he'll come up with a great story about working Lawler, and maybe they didn't really get along. And you're like, oh, well, what's the story? And then he's got a great story about Tracy Smothers. When obviously Tracy recently passed, he's got a great story about how they almost got into this huge fight and the cops got involved, and he's got a wealth of knowledge. But I just love the fact that he's trained so many guys, so any current fans can really kind of relate to him and say, wow, he trained Mark Henry too, and trained this guy, and trained. So he's really relatable. And I love talking about the Heavenly Bodies, and obviously Jim Cornette, and just that whole run with him, because he was such a great worker and kind of underrated. And we do go into the Body Donnas as well, which he absolutely hates, so that's kind of fun to kind of poke fun at him about.
And there was always a special place in my heart for Tom, because I don't know if this has changed over the years. I don't think it's really something he talked about publicly, but he always had a special place in my heart because at times he couldn't stand his own brother, which I could relate to. So I don't want to get too deep into that. But I do want to make sure we say this again, John, because somebody is already asking me, Matros, Keto, and Wrestling, where is the wrestling school? You started giving the name, and then I interrupt you. Give the name. Where is it? How do people get in touch with Dr. Tom?
So jpwrestlingacademy.com. It's JPWA. It's Jacobs Pritchard. So it's Glenn Jacobs Kane Wrestling Academy down in Knoxville, Tennessee. So just go to the website, jpwrestlingacademy.com. Now, if you think about this school, just think like, okay, if I'm going to be a wrestler and I want to make it WWE, should I possibly train under the guy who trained Vince, Shane, The Rock, Kurt Angle, Mark Henry? Goes on and on. And also, by the way, the guy who owns the actual gym is Kane, who still works for WWE and has a great relationship. Who, oh, by the way, random guys like Sheamus pop in there all the time. Undertaker popped in there. I think more than once, by the way. So it's like, okay, like if you're going to want to go train somewhere, you probably want to train there. They just got Emily Andrulis, who just got signed to NXT. She's from there. There's somebody else that they're looking at from there. So WB is, and Bruce has been there a few times. So they got their eye on that place.
Did Tom wrestle Bruce, and did Bruce put Tom over?
Bruce was just there to scout, I think.
Oh, okay, scout. Yeah, guy, this drives me crazy, guys. And you're asking a Matros, and I think this is very important, guys. This drives me crazy when you have the ambition to be a wrestler and you want to break into the wrestling business, and you go to a school where the head trainer or the owner of the school has no credentials. Guys, you really have to look at that. I mean, John, I'm a huge baseball guy. Bro, if I'm a 14-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, and I want to start really, honing my craft, bro, I want to pay for batting lessons from somebody who was, at least in the minor leagues and you got to look at who the trainers of this school is. And me knowing Tom, I guarantee I don't have to go to that school to know, bro, he's training these guys hands-on. There aren't other people training you. You're going to be in that ring with Dr. Tom because, bro, that's how people like Tom and Bubba and Al Snow and all those guys, that's how they do it, bro. They do it the way they were trained.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the great thing with him. He is definitely hands-on. He's always there. He's always at the school. So it's not one of those schools where the guy never shows up. His name's on the thing, but he never shows up. So he's always there.
Yeah, that's not Tom. I mean, that is not Tom. What else, bro? That's one of the four. What else do we have, John?
So your buddy and my buddy, just incredible. Pro Wrestling 101, his awesome series that he does. I don't know if people realize he is one of the greatest minds of the business. I was talking to Raven, and I was talking to Scott Hall separately to different times, and 123 Kid Sean Waldman. And they were saying, and because PJ kind of puts them over, like he learned so much from them. Raven flat out told me he's full of shit. Like, what do you mean he's full of shit? He goes, I probably learned more from him than he learned from me. And I was like, what? And that's kind of shocking, but possibly true because he's got a great mind, PJ.
You know what? It really isn't shocking because, bro, I was there for Aldo Montoya. And I was there, bro, when those relationships were being formed with PJ and Scott Hall, with PJ and Shawn Michaels, with PJ and Sean Waltman. Bro, those guys aren't going to be drawn to just anybody. This is an exclusive club. They're not going to make anybody their friend. So there was something there that attracted them to PJ. So that's when Raven makes that comment, that's what they saw in PJ at a very young age. And John, I don't even know if you know this, but Pat Patterson just passed away. Bro, there isn't anybody who came up that Pat raved more about than PJ. Wow. And bro, that right there tells you everything you need to know. Pat Patterson was PJ's biggest fan when he first came up through the ranks in the WWE.
PJ would tell me that they had smoking cigarettes in common. So they'd go off on their own, smoke cigarettes, and he said he would just ask Pat questions and just ask. And he would just puffing away and giving him like all the psychology tricks. Because it's amazing. Like if you just, even on a road trip with PJ, we'll go like an hour to Philly or something. Man, it's like, man, this guy knows so much stuff. And I was like, well, why'd the guy do that? He was like, well, because this, and this. I'm like, wow, that's so smart. And obviously, you learned a lot from Pat Patterson, but I think a lot of it was just innate. He just naturally knows a lot about wrestling.
He does, bro. That's why I do the AEW review show with him, because he knows his way around the wrestling ring, bro.
Yeah, and I'll say, hey, why the hell did the Young Bucks do that? And he'll be like, well, they were shooting for this, and it's like, oh, okay, kind of makes sense. But he's like, but they shouldn't have done it. It's like, yeah, true. Like he really can know like more, just because obviously being in the ring, but just from watching it, he can pick up so many things that I just can't pick up. It's like, wow, that's great.
Yeah. All right, that's 2. What else we got on the plate?
University of Dutch with Dutch Mantel. He'll be returning. He retires and comes back a lot, but he's returning. He even joked around. He goes, I'm a guest on my own show. That's what he said to me. I was like, yeah, pretty much. But he is a wealth of knowledge. And you give him one topic, like I'll say Andy Kaufman, he'll go off on an hour about Andy Kaufman. So, I mean, he's just, and his stories are awesome. Like he'll talk about the Puerto Rico riots. Hey, how did you think of this idea? Well, I was drunk on the beach looking at my toes. And he's got just, and he's honest. Like, he's not going to bullshit. Like some of his stories are just off the wall and crazy and nuts. And obviously the Bruiser Brody stuff too. He was right there in the thick of it. So, I mean, he's got stories upon stories of stuff that is just awesome to me. I love the old Memphis stuff. I love the Puerto Rico stuff, the WWF stuff. Didn't even really get into the TNA stuff, but he kind of sprinkles in some TNA stuff too. I mean, he's been everywhere.
Bro, to me, and I got to be honest with you, bro, I don't know if anybody even touches the top 3. Bro, to me, the 3 greatest storytellers, and I've been in the business for 30 years. The 3 greatest storytellers are Cornette, Bruce, and Dutch.
Yep.
I've spent so much time around these guys and the entertaining story. And bro, nobody can deliver a story like Dutch. I sat in so many writing sessions with Dutch at a TNA. It was 4 of us, bro. It was me, it was Dutch, it was Jeff Jarrett, and it was a young kid that I kind of tutored and went on. I think he's still actively writing for NWA now, Matt Conway.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it was the 4 of us together every single week at Jeff's house. So I got to listen to every Dutch Mantel story. We are, John, you got to have the both of us on, because I got to settle something once and for all that pisses me off a little bit, because I think Dutch is a little confused. But I remember I left TNA. And I left TNA because I became a Christian. And I just did not want to be in that environment anymore. Okay. Well, what happened was we found out Jeff's wife had cancer. So I knew Jeff had his hands full with his 3 daughters, his dying wife, and I wanted to help my friend. Okay. So I went back to TNA. And I remember, John, the first meeting I was sitting in, a pay-per-view was coming up. And they had already booked, and they were talking about this electrified cage match. And bro, listen, if you know anything about stuff like that, electrified cages and stuff like that, that's Puerto Rico stuff. Like that's where that came from. Now, John, I remember it was my first day back, and I can't say anything. But what I'm saying in my mind was, it wasn't that the idea was bad. Bro, there was no way TNA was capable of pulling that off. It was TNA. Kevin Dunn can make that happen. Bro, TNA, there was no way. And like I was sitting there and I'm thinking through my mind, guys, do you know what this is going to look like? The TNA, they don't have the resources to pull this off. This is going to be horrible. So, bro, of course, I go to the show, and we have the electrified cage. I think it was the Dudleys against LAX, maybe. Bro, it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. I've actually done stuff worse, but this was one of the worst things I saw. That was not my idea. And bro, during this match, they're chanting "Fire Russo."
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
which okay, I'm cool with, but bro, if I did it, I'd listen. I did the dog match from hell match. That was my idea. That was atrocious.
Yeah.
So if this were mine, I'd have no problem saying, yeah, bro, I did that. But this was not mine. But what was mine? And this is where I think Dutch may be getting confused. Bro, at TNA, we were always looking to do something new and different. And bro, when you do things new and different, John, some things are going to work, some things aren't. You know that going in, but you're trying to do new stuff and show the audience something new. I did that. I think it was called a Stairway to Heaven match between Abyss and Sting. And the winner of the match, climbed up on this platform and it took him into the heavens. That's how you won the match. It was kind of like a last man standing. Okay. Right. Now, bro, that was my idea. And that idea sucked. Again, I'm sitting there watching that idea. I'm like, bro, this idea absolutely sucks. So I think Dutch may have that confused with the electrified cage. And I'd love to have that discussion with him because, bro, listen, that electrified cage gimmick, and not that I'm saying it was a bad idea. I guarantee you WWE can have a match like that and pull it off. I mean, they're capable of that. Bro, TNA was not capable of doing that. I'd love to pop on Dutch's show here and there. And because, gosh, bro, this guy knows so freaking much.
He said you never called him back, Dutch. I don't know if he was joking or working me or not.
Oh, but no, he thinks I didn't call him back because when I tried to call back I called him back once and got a voicemail. Okay, one time. And then when I tried to call him back again, I got the mailbox is full gimmick.
Oh, I think he had your old number or something because originally he said some number to me. I was like, I don't know what his number that is.
I'm going to touch base with Dutch in the new year. Yeah, but I'm trying to clean some stuff off of my plate so I could do stuff like that because I would love to talk to Dutch again. I mean,
even just talk TNA stuff would be great. Like, what were they thinking?
Bro, there's nobody, bro. The correlation between your mind to your mouth, and when you hear how fast. Dutch man, all three of those guys, Dutch, Bruce, and Cornette, when you hear how fast they talk, bro, going from your brain to your mouth and coming out that fast and that clear, bro, that's a gift. And these guys, man, you want to talk about storytelling, man, I guarantee you there will never be a boring Dutch show.
Yep, totally agree. I'm actually surprised that you love Cornette's storytelling so much. I figured you would hate it, but yeah. And you were saying the other day to me that you were listening to a show. I was like, "What?"
Oh, bro. When I'm on YouTube, because that's what I do at night, bro. I got my you're talking to this gimmick, and I just YouTube, and all the clips come up, and there are a lot of Cornette clips. I don't listen to full shows, but there's a lot of Cornette talking, and that's what I listen to. And my God, bro, to this day, I've said it, bro. I swear to God, John, if we really want to be successful, we need to produce a television show of Jim and Dutch living together. I have said this for 30 years. Bro, I don't care who you are, man, woman, or child, you would not be able to take your eyes off of that show. And you would think the whole time it's a work. You would think there is no way on earth there are two people like this on this planet. Bro, that would be the most entertaining show on television.
And I love it. I mean, they've known each other since the early '80s. So I mean, they've known each other for 40 years. So I mean, they got a lot of stories too, like
Yeah.
together, which is cool.
Yeah, that is tremendous. And last but not least, what is the fourth show?
Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. Such a great mind for wrestling. Not only was he a great wrestler, but he was also a great booker. Booked the NWO, booked WCW when they were at their high point. I mean, he's just got story upon story. I mean, he can go old school, he can go 70 if you want, but I love to focus on the WCW stuff and behind the scenes and what was going on there. Sometimes we'll pick, let's just say, for instance, Mick Foley or Conan or something, and we can go on and have a long conversation about everything that those guys done, his history with those guys behind the scenes. What were they like? So I mean, he's got so many stories, even about Benoit. We'll go on and on and on about Benoit, and there's obviously a lot of backstory and a lot of history there, but it's just so cool to kind of pick his mind because he obviously had a relationship with woman and Benoit and Sullivan's in the middle, and then they get together, and then they feud on TV for a year. I mean, it's just really interesting stuff how he can get in divulge stuff. Good friends with Flair, she's got bunch of Flair stories. Was good friends with Hogan, has got a bunch of Hogan stuff, but then there's like the controversies. What happened at Starrcade? What happened here? So he is just a wealth of knowledge, and I love doing that show with Kevin.
Yeah, and bro, this is a guy that I don't want to say grew up watching. I mean, I was, an adult when I watched a lot of his stuff, and I loved Kevin Sullivan. I loved Kevin Sullivan's promos. I love Kevin Sullivan as a performer. I was excited to go to WCW and work with Kevin Sullivan. Now, listen, John, I always like to get records clean, but I felt, and bro, to this day, I don't have proof of this. I felt, I was at WCW for 3 months, and I knew there was a lot of scuttlebutt going on behind my back. I knew it while it was happening. And quite frankly, I thought Sullivan was a part of that. And it really hurt me because of what I thought about Kevin Sullivan. Now, like I said, bro, that could be paranoid Vince. I never had proof of that. Nobody ever said to me, Vince, Kevin saying this, Kevin saying that. And I never went down that way. It was just my feeling. But with that being said, bro, I don't hold freaking grudges. And I know how the wrestling business is, and I know how the wrestling business works. Kevin's done my show since, and we had like a freaking great 2-hour conversation. I could talk. Kevin Sullivan is a guy that I could talk to all day, bro. I could talk to Kevin all. Can you imagine just hanging? I know Kevin's into crabbing and he lives on the water and he loves all that stuff. Can you imagine just hanging out with this guy for a day? And bro, he's cool and he's hip. That's what WWE is lacking. They have guys that are, been around forever, but they're younger than Kevin. But Kevin was always cool and hip. There was always something about Kevin where, regardless of how long he's been in the business, he was always relevant. He always comes across as an out-of-the-box thinker. And God, bro, these four individuals with their intelligence and their knowledge of this business, it's like a treasure chest of gold, bro.
Yeah, it really is. And I love, each week getting to talk to these guys about just anything, any topic. Even Sullivan off air, he just tells me some great stuff. And you would think just from his character and the way people like build him up, like, oh, he's got to be crazy. He's got to be off the wall. He's got to be like, some like right wing, like nut job or something like something. You just think like, oh, he might be some crazy person. Not at all. He is so much more normal than anybody would think. The devil stuff, obviously, is a lot of it was a work. So, I mean, people got to realize that. But he's just so cool and awesome. Like he knows his history, knows his boxing, knows his baseball. He's a football guy a little bit, so really cool just to talk to him. And I was such a big WCW fan. I'm just like, what the hell happened at Starrcade '97? And he could tell me everything that happened behind the scenes with Hogan. What the hell Nick Patrick was thinking about? What happened? What was going on with Sting? What did Bischoff do? So a lot of cool stuff. And it's interesting too because you'll get to listen, like to say Bischoff's show. Somebody like, oh, Bischoff said this. How much of this is true? Not to say Bischoff lying or something, but what is your account? What is your? And he'll be like, well, I don't quite remember it that way, but maybe Eric. But but some of it aligns, some of it doesn't. So
Right.
that's why I think it's cool to be able to do it on his show, because sometimes people will take what somebody says and think it's 100% fact, like that you booked Starcade 2000, you weren't even there, and,
Yeah.
and then people will just roll with it. So you ask Kevin, be like, "No, I don't think he was there at that point." It's like, okay, oh, cool,
Yeah.
all right, get like a different account, or maybe the true, quote unquote, true account of what happened.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I would love, man, pop in and out of these shows, man, because I'm like John, man. I'm a fan of these guys. I can listen to these guys forever, and their knowledge and wisdom of the years that they put into the business, that does not exist today, bro. That's why I love, bro. It's like talking to former, major league all stars. The legends about the game and what it used to mean and what it took to get in the game and what you had to do to stay in the game. I mean, you cannot, man, you can't put a value on these stories, John. You really can't, bro.
I agree. It's like you said, it's like a treasure chest of like just awesome knowledge. And sometimes you never know what you're going to get. You open it up. I'll mention something to Dr. Thompson about Portland, and all of a sudden, like he's got some awesome story about Buddy Rose or something. So yeah, it's just really cool, like to kind of find out some stuff, and some stuff you had no idea, and some stuff that's out there that they're like, that never happened. I'm like, oh,
Right.
really? Like Kevin, there's a story out there that Terry Taylor, because of Melter, book this show, and da, da, da. He goes, I booked it. He goes, Terry was like my assistant. I was like, oh, but Terry fed Meltzer that story, so Meltzer thought it was true. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Bro, I listen, I was friends with Terry, and Terry still buzzes me here and there. And I worked a lot with Terry for a lot of years. Bro, in all the time I worked with Terry, Terry never booked a show. Like now he was part of committees and talent relations and all that stuff. Bro, Terry was never the head writer or the booker of any show ever. And I work with him, bro. I work with him in 3 companies.
Yeah. I think
That's
he
all we
booked
did.
Starcade 2000, but it was with a committee. I think Ed was still there though
Yeah,
at that point.
bro. I honestly don't know what happened because I left in October. So like what they were doing in September, I'm sorry, December. I have no idea.
And I
Well,
think Johnny Ace was in charge anyways, but I don't know, who knows what was going on really
I
at
don't
that
even
time.
know. But anyway, guys, this is how it's going to break down. Now, PJ already does the AEW review show on Patreon. So, what is it? Wrestling 101, right? Wrestling 101 with PJ, PJ Polanco, Just Incredible. That is going to be on the Realm Network. Okay. Also on the Realm Network now going forward is going to be the great, great Kevin Sullivan. On Patreon, guys, because I want to make this even, Steven, across the board, we are going to have the great Dutch Mantel, and we are going to have Dr. Tom Pritchard. That's how this thing is going to line up. Now, guys, no increase in price. There is 0 increase in price. The price remains the same, but we are looking to kick this off immediately, starting January 1st. And guys, listen, I've told you for a month now, you had an entire month to get a free month of the brand. I know people are going to wake up tomorrow morning, January 1st, and say, I should have got my free month of the brand. No, do it today because you will get these shows free for an entire month, no strings attached. We do it every December. And bro, not to mention, PJ and Kevin Sullivan. My God, you're going to get Stevie Richards. You're going to get Ben Hameen, the Disco Inferno. You're going to get Shane Douglas. You're going to get Taylor Hendricks. You're going to get Big Vito. The list goes on and on and on. The talent that you're going to get on the brand. So, guys, if you have never tried us, today is the last day. Just go to russosbrand.com and grab your free subscription. Man, I got to tell you, John, John, tell me about your show. My gosh. I mean,
yeah.
all the, God, and tell us about people you've brought on your show. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, going to be bringing an interview series along with me for sure to the brand, which is just something I just love to do because I've done and I was trying to count how many. It was over 600 interviews with just some of the biggest and best. Haven't gotten everybody on, which is a goal of mine, but some of the best. We've had on, I just interviewed Sting not that long ago, Mick Foley, Goldberg, Shawn Michaels, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Sean Waltman, had on Bruno Sammartino, had on superstar Billy Graham, obviously had on Dusty Rhodes, had on Kane, Jerry McDivitt was a great one. So we've interviewed Kamala back in the day, George Animal Steel. So there's some awesome guys. Ivan Koloff, some just great. I just keep thinking of just random names, but some awesome legends and great guys. Interview some of the current guys too, but I really love interviewing more of the old school guys. They're more of my wheelhouse of talking to guys. Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Barry Windham, J.J. Dillon. I mean, the list just goes on and on. I've probably done, I think, somewhere around 600 total, but I'm going to be bringing a lot more to the brand. I got a lot of ideas, a lot of guys I want to interview, and a lot of good guests coming up for sure.
Man, that's incredible, John. 600 over how long a span?
5 years.
That's incredible, bro. That is absolutely incredible. And guys, we're going to sprinkle those interviews on Realm. We're going to sprinkle them on Patreon. Maybe we'll put some on YouTube. But this is all an added addition, guys. And I'm so excited to be doing this with John. John, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you through social media.
So it's just simple at 2-Man Power Trip on Twitter and Instagram. You can go to my website, tmptempire.com. My DMs are open. Anybody wants to DM me or whatever, but I am always usually on there and very easily accessible. Got a lot of stuff coming out. Just be ready because there's going to be some really fun stuff, especially coming up with Vince as well.
Yes. Now, John, here's the bad news. I just had this great conversation with you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Now I got to go from this to a show with the disco in front of it. Do you know what a downer that is, bro? Where I got to say, okay, what disco am I going to get today? Am I going to get happy disco and insightful disco, or am I going to get disco on his phone, not paying attention? That's what I got to walk into now. But guys, listen, man, John is now a part of the family, the 2-Man Power Trip, man. I am tickled pink to have John on board. A lot of great things in 2021. Guys, go get your free month right now at russosbrand.com. For me and the great John Poz, we'll see you tomorrow.